welcome to Experiment Center here. Today I'm doing some, let me just make sure everything is closed before I spill something. I'm doing some alchemy, some concoctions, and trying to figure out how paint responds. If you're new here, hi, welcome. My name is Irit. I'm a watercolor and mixed media artist. I think watercolors are the most magical of mediums or media. And I particularly love the granulating and separating quality of them, which is quite unique. Ignore this blob here. What I wanted to focus on was really try and kind of make sense and order of using this medium. This is the Winsor Newton Granulation medium. Yeah, I have it also in this kind of container, which makes it really easy to, drop it. And I wanted to use French Ultramarine or Ultramarine Blue. It's mostly French Ultramarine, I think, because it's a classical color and I think a good reference, kind of something everyone knows, and I have it from a few brands. So that's another thing I wanted to kind of compare and contrast. And it is also a granulating color. And I wanted to see how this medium works with it. Now, I have played quite a bit with this, but I never do it in an organized way. And so I don't know what I'm going to get. But I did notice when I played around with it that with the Qor paints, I kind of tried it on all of the Qor half pans and the cute Qor half pan set that I've talked about in the past on my channel, that the effect was really extreme, and I will show you also. And today I replicated that using not the half pans, actually a tube. I have this tube of Ultramarine Blue. Sorry, it's I think I used 4 different colors: Ultramarine Blue from Qor, French Ultramarine from Daniel Smith, French Ultramarine from Rembrandt, and something from White Nights, which I don't know if it's Ultramarine Blue or French Ultramarine. It's the same pigment. I'm not actually sure what the difference is. I know, for example, that Daniel Smith has both Ultramarine Blue and French Ultramarine. I think I've only tried the French. So if you've had any experience and, which one you prefer and why, then help us out in the comments. But I wanted to see if it also worked with the tube paints. And here are the results. So yeah, things are still wet here. But I also did this in my logbook because I wanted a reference. But yeah, then I did like a backup on regular watercolor paper because this is just like crap paper. And with granulation, it does really depend on your paper. Okay, so ignore this poor experiment. But I'll show you what the results were. And it is less obvious on this crap paper. So, it's with all my good intentions, I don't know that this is the good, the best place to do these kinds of experiments. Okay, so this is the Qor Blue, Ultramarine Blue. I'll just write it. Ultramarine Blue. This is Daniel Smith, French Ultramarine. This is Rembrandt, French Ultramarine. And this is White Nights, something, one of them. So this is Qor Ultramarine Blue as it is. But I like my Ultramarine Blue pretty like reddish. And so tone-wise, this is not my favorite. However, look at this. So once you add the medium, it becomes kind of reminds me of the lunar colors from Daniel Smith. Extreme, extreme granulation. Now, obviously, this is not for the weak-hearted. I mean, this won't work all the time. You don't necessarily want this effect all the time, but I think it's pretty cool to be able to create that. And here what I did was I just like dropped a drop of the medium into the wet paint. And that kind of gives you a more like a varied effect, I would say. All of these are quite unpredictable. And yeah, but I love that. And I think this for me is becoming more and more kind of like a go-to when I'm painting because I love so much the texture and the granulation and separation. So it's very exciting to play around with these. I feel like you have more of, you know, that these possibilities with acrylic paints, you know, because you have heavy body paints and you have liquid paints and high flow, and you can add all kinds of mediums to them. You can really water them down with water. You can add pouring medium. And with watercolors, I don't really feel like, I think most of what we see is just like, you know, a little water and a lot of water. There's not as much playing with the texture and the effects, and I want to change that, and I think that's like one of the things that are really interesting to me. Okay, so then I tried the Daniel Smith French Ultramarine. You can see it's pretty, it has a bit of stronger granulation than the Qor one on its own. Here I just dropped some of the granulation medium into it, and you can see that it enhances the effect, but it's not as dramatic as here. And here is where I dropped the granulation medium into my paint on my palette and then added it. So this, you know, it's more of like a controlled effect. It's more kind of even. I mean, the whole wash can be more granulating. I think this would work really well for, you know, like here, like when you paint your, let's say, sky or sea with just the ultramarine blue or French ultramarine without anything, and then drop into it some of the granulation medium. I think that will create kind of fun effects for sun and sky, sky and seas, or, you know, abstracts, which is more what I'm interested in. And then I thought, okay, so we know, kind of what we know, that Qor has the Aquazol, which is their patent binder. And I thought, okay, that's probably what's responsible to this extreme effect. And so I also have on hand the synthetic Ox Gall, which I don't know if this is a different, you know, unrelated to the Aquazol, or if this is actually their binder in, you know, a jar. So I don't know. What I can tell you is when you add this to other paints from other brands, it gives them that bossy, pushy quality that Qor paints have when you combine them with other paints, which I also have a dedicated video to that on my channel, and I highly suggest you check it out. I know a lot of you have added Qor to your collection for that effect, or have started combining Qor with other brands to enjoy this effect, and that makes me really happy. So I thought, okay, what happens if I add this to the non-Qor paints? Will this give me the same dramatic result? And to a degree, it did with the Daniel Smith. I can't say that with other brands it worked as dramatically, but you can see it also here. So this is Qor, and I'll just, now I think it's a bit, I'll show you, I'll just drop some of the granulation medium. So this is Qor, and you just, you just like add it to your paint, and you can already see that it does stuff and it starts to make the paint, yeah, like basically kind of gives it this extreme kind of granulation effect or clumping or whatever you want to call it. So this is the Daniel Smith paint with both of them. So the granulation medium from Winsor Newton and then the synthetics Ox Gall from Qor. And you can see that in the palette it is very extreme. It didn't really translate to my painting when I, dipped a brush in it, but I do suspect that, if you wanted to play around with this and, you just wanted, let's see, if I take a piece of watercolor paper and I dip it in there, I don't know if I can get, it's almost dry. It's like it dries to this extreme effect. So I don't know, it's like interesting, and I'm also interested to see what would happen if I added like a bit of gouache to this or a bit of white, like what would happen then. I can actually do this right now because I have a little bit of white here. I'm just like really curious on how, like, what options do I have to really elevate the kind of effects that I can get when it comes to texture. And of course there are like the classical techniques of using like saran wrap and salt, and those are great, but I really like just like mixing things together that I don't have to then remove or wait, or just like playing kind of mad scientist with all of these. That's kind of what excites me about this. So yeah, look look at the palette. Just does all kinds of crazy stuff. Really interesting. And then with the Rembrandt, it was more indifferent to all of these effects. It did, you can see it here without anything, so this is just as it is. I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little bit bluer than the White Knight's Ultramarine Blue or French Ultramarine, I don't know, and the Qor, which is one of the reasons that I love it. But yeah, it didn't do as much with the granulation medium. It did enhance it like a little bit, but nowhere near as dramatic as the effect with Qor and also the Daniel Smith one. I think you would agree that this is also pretty dramatic, like really intense texture and granulation. The paper also plays a big role, so it could be that, for example, with my beloved Hahnemühle papers, it might be even more enhanced or less. I don't know, I have to check. But you don't know until you put it to the test. And yeah, so in that aspect, my Rembrandt is a little bit behind. And then last but not least, we have the White Knights that you can't see. So it's here, and this is without the granulation medium and this is with it. So a little bit, nothing to write home about. Like for me, if I wanted to really get an intense effect, I would use the Qor paint. But yeah, if you don't have Qor paints on hand, it's worth trying with this. And I only added a couple of drops. You might, if you add more, it might be a more intense effect. Now, I also wanted to see what happens with other colors, and from what I'm seeing, I didn't test like a ton, but it seems like colors that don't granulate. I have here, what are you? I think this is quinacridone rose. It didn't really do much. I have here Nicolazo yellow. Talking to myself, oh, how I love it when that happens. So what I was saying is that the granulation medium doesn't do much with colors that are not granulating to begin with. So from my experience, don't waste your time, or do a little test before you waste a lot of paint. So you want to save this for the paints that are already granulating to kind of enhance that effect. The exception to that statement are the Qor paints, which seem to just react with it no matter what kind of pigment they're made of. And the example that I showed you already was the quinacridone gold, which is the quinacridones are not granulating colors. They are, they're like transparent, non-granulating colors, but it created this really intense texture with the Qor paint and the granulation medium. So definitely something to keep in mind. And just looking around here, yeah, again, this particular, if you missed this video, I was just setting up a new palette, which is here, this one, which you can find in my shop. It's really, really lovely ceramic palettes. And again, you can see here kind of the colors that already have granulation. It really enhances it and it's a beautiful effect. But those that don't, it's just kind of a waste of product. So this is Amazonite from Daniel Smith, and that is beautiful. So note to self to try this combo again. And yes, I may consider purchasing some Qor paint just so I can take advantage of this effect, even though the single Qor tubes are ridiculously expensive, and that's why I don't buy them. So here is, again, this paper I think is really bad for this particular goal, so I'm not going to say anything, but I do want to see how Moonglow reacts with this. It does enhances it a little bit, but I'm thinking if I add a little bit of the Ox Gall and the granulation medium, that might create kind of a more interesting effect. So definitely worth exploring. And here I have Dusk Pink from Rembrandt. Again, kind of hard to tell with this paper, but I can definitely make some notes in my logbook, so that I know for next time. And I just think it's really fun. And this, this is like the tip of the iceberg, because there's so many combinations you could try. And if you're really brave, you could try, for example, adding white acrylic ink and seeing what happens, or other colors. I remember I tried this now in vain to show you, but I remember that I used this granulation medium with one of my acrylic inks, and it created a very, very dramatic effect. So just because it's labeled as a, watercolor medium doesn't mean that you can't try and use it with your other mediums. I'm really excited and just eager to play around with textures, because right now that's one of the things I'm like most fascinated by. And I will continue to experiment and keep you updated. What I also wanted to show you, this is another Qor medium, this is watercolor medium, and they say it's transparent medium, increases gloss, add to watercolor. I don't really see like that it does anything exciting, so for now I'm kind of disappointed with this. But if you've tried this and you found a way to use this that you like, then please let us know in the comments. For me, for now, I don't really see what it does, like increase gloss. I don't know, I kind of like that watercolors are matte, but yeah, so not sure what this will work for. Maybe I'll find out one day. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this inspires you to play chemist with your paints. And I would definitely say, definitely, especially if you have Qor paints and you like granulation, pick up the Winsor Newton. It comes in a bottle like this. I have, it doesn't take a lot, especially if you're painting on like a small scale, but I will be picking up a couple of bottles of this so I don't have to be precious about it. and definitely move it to a bottle with a dropper. It will make your life so much easier, and you can also kind of more easily quantify how much you add from your medium. And that is it. So I will see you again in another video soon, I hope. I will be going on vacation, and I'm trying to pre-record some videos for you so you don't feel that I'm on vacation. But yeah, if I disappear for a little bit, I should be back by mid-September, hopefully. So thank you so much for being here, and have a lovely day. Bye.